My neighbor is one of those annoying wannabe YouTube personalities. And over the years, I've seen him cough out cinnamon, lay flat on the hood of his car as it slowly creeps down the driveway, and douse himself in lukewarm water, all the while screaming, "Epic win, epic fail," or "epic maintenance of the status quo." Needless to say, it can get tiring to watch him go about his shenanigans in the pursuit of viral fame. So when he knocked on my door the other day, told me that he was going away for a few weeks, and asked if I would get his mail. And honestly, it was a relief. I can't explain the peace of mind that I had knowing that I didn't have to brace myself for any of his stupidity for a while. And I was always afraid that his stunts would end up bleeding over into my life. And things were pretty normal for the first couple of days. He received a few bills, a bit of spam, and what could only be assumed was a birthday card. And then one evening, I got home to find a cardboard box waiting on his front porch. And in big red letters was written, "Return to sender." Now, I'm no small fry, but I admit that I had trouble lifting the box on my own. It was really freaking heavy. Lugging it across the road to my house was even harder, and I quickly realized that there was no way that I was going to drag it up the stairs and through my front door. I decided that I'd leave his package in my garage. It wasn't like I kept my car in there anyway. The garage door was a piece of shit that refused to open without a good thug and a whack. Let's just say it was less trouble just leaving the car in the driveway than it was to fight with the garage door morning and night. And in hindsight, I should have set the package down while I struggled to open the tricky door. You know how it is when you've got a good grip on something. No point in setting it down if you don't have to. It was as I kicked the door for a third time that I lost my grip on the package, and it fell to the ground, and I heard a light crack inside. Shit, I cursed. I really hoped that I didn't break anything important, but I figured I would just, not tell my neighbor about it, and hopefully he would believe that it broke en route. Hands-free, I finally managed to get the garage door unstuck. And boy, did it screech in protest as it rolled up and over me. I dragged the box the rest of the way, setting it in the corner for whenever my neighbor would eventually be back to claim it. And then, I forgot all about it. Until a few days passed, that is. I'm not sure exactly how long it took for the smell to waft in from the crack under the garage to the house door, but it came in slow progression. It was a sickly, sweet odor, similar to that of a skunk. And for the first few days after I smelled it, I genuinely assumed that that's exactly what it was. Roadkill that had left its mark on my house. It was only when I realized that the scent was growing more intense instead of fading that I decided to look for the source. And that's when I opened the garage door. And that's when the odor knocked me back, holding my nose. The culprit wasn't hard to identify. The only change in my garage was that box in the corner. And I remember thinking that it must have been one of those meat of the month subscription boxes. The meat must have gone rancid for being left out of the fridge for so long. How much meat could have been in there for the box to have been so large and so heavy? The entire freaking cow? And I covered my nose as I approached the box, a pair of scissors in my hands, and I probably wouldn't have needed them to open it, as it had become soggy enough at the bottom to poke through with a finger, but I wasn't about to poke my finger into spoiled meat juices. The soggy bottom was the reason that I had to open the box in the first place. If I tried to drag it out whole, everything would just spill out onto the floor. I was going to have to dump the pieces of meat one garbage bag at a time and take them down to the dumpster, a process that I really was not looking forward to. My scissor tore through the tape along the top of the cardboard box. I thought that the smell couldn't get any worse, but as I flipped the flaps open, I discovered a whole new gamut of stink. It was like opening a burning oven, but instead of a heat wave, I was met with waves of piss, sweat, shit, and just putrefaction. It was so bad that I staggered back and had to force down the puke beginning to guzzle out of me. I don't think that I could have handled that scent mingling with the horrors coming out of the box. Now, I'm not ashamed to admit that I ran out the door for a breath of fresh air. But in that short time I spent in the garage, the smell had become so ingrained in the fabric of my clothes that it clung to me like a shadow. Nothing I tried could keep the smell out of my nostrils. Not air fresheners, not a face mask, not 3 showers and a change of clothes. Every second that box lay open in my garage was another second that smell was allowed a foothold in my home. I had to bite the bullet. I returned to the garage, the flaps of the box still open as though inviting me to look. I was prepared. A clothespin pinning my nostril shut, a garbage bag in one hand, the strongest cleaner that I could find in the other, and long rubber gloves to keep my skin from having to touch what was inside. But as it turns out, I needed none of those things. I wouldn't have to touch or clean the contents of the box. I would only have to suffer the nightmares every night. You see, there was meat in the box. But it didn't come from a cow or a pig. No. It was worse than that. And it was my neighbor. Dead. Still in one piece. But dead. I called the cops and naturally, they took me in for investigation. It's kind of hard not to suspect the man with a corpse in his garage after all. Thankfully, they soon realized that I wasn't involved. My DNA might have been all over the box, the smell might have left a mark through my house, but there was one piece of irrefutable evidence in my neighbor's own hand that proved my innocence. A vlogging camera. They showed me in the footage only once. I'm not sure if they were allowed to, or if they just felt bad for me. They figured that it couldn't hurt. Either way, I saw it. My neighbor was sitting in the box outside of a shipping facility, laughing as he told the world how he was going to mail himself across state lines. He brought pee bottles, food, a pillow, and a few flashlights. His friend, a guy that I'd seen at his place several times to help with his stunts, closed the lid and presumably dropped him off for shipment. And throughout the next couple of hours, or days, I'm honestly not sure, my neighbor recorded a few short clips about his progress.
I think I'm in a tow truck now. I can feel it moving. Must be in a warehouse. Pretty warm in here. Still got plenty of food.
That kind of stuff. And then on the last entry, the box toppled over. And he broke his neck and that was it. The camera recorded until either the memory card got too full or the battery died. There's one thing I didn't tell the police after they showed me this video. One thing I heard in the footage that will haunt me to the day that I die. Just after the tumble that broke his neck, I heard the familiar screeching sound of my garage door. When I was in high school, my friends and I had a peculiar pastime. Like any teenage delinquent, we liked to cause trouble. We weren't vandals, and we didn't deal drugs, and we certainly didn't bully kids in school. No, we liked to scare the shit out of new parents by hacking their baby monitors. We were insufferable little punks who thought that we were too good to get caught, and that our little acts of mischief would go unpunished. One night, however, I learned my lesson. And I realized that I wasn't quite as bulletproof as my tremendous adolescent ego made me out to be. Dimitri, Kurt, and I went to the same school, shared many of the same classes, and hung out almost every evening after chow time. We watched prank shows, played video games, and talked about who had the nicest rack in school. And one evening, we were trading scary stories at the park. Kurt shared the classic story about the single mother who had heard a haunting voice on her baby monitor. Like most horror stories, it sounded like total bullshit. But Dimitri told us that it had happened to his mom once. On her own monitor, she heard a neighbor singing to her baby. Apparently, it was possible to accidentally tap into someone else's frequency. In an instant, a light bulb turned on to each of our heads. When you're close enough to someone, you don't need words to know what the other person is thinking. And we could all tell that we were thinking the exact same thing. We were going to buy a baby monitor and screw with people. Now, pardon the pun, but hacking a baby monitor is child's play. All you need to do is find a device on the same frequency as yours. Never one to do things half-assed, I purchased a high-end monitor with a frequency dial so that way we could prank as many targets as possible. The following night, we took our bikes, roamed the neighborhood, and found our first victim. We could see the nursery rhyme from the suburban home's second-floor window. Dimitri grabbed the baby monitor and began turning it to different frequencies, until we heard him breathing. And I remember the feeling of excitement as our plan finally came to fruition. Dimitri pressed the button and began exhaling heavily into the receiver.
Your little girl was delicious,
He murmured using a demonic voice. The light in the master bedroom turned on almost immediately, and we heard a shrill scream. Laughing our asses off, we quickly rode down the street so that way we wouldn't get caught. We repeated the prank several times over the course of the following weeks, each taking turns through the monitor, not wanting any more to get wise to our old little game. We chose different houses every time. People's reactions were priceless. Some others would reply in a panic, and others seemed to know that it was a hoax and just told us to shut up. And one poor woman even started sobbing uncontrollably, begging us not to hurt her baby. I feel bad about the last one now that I'm older, but it was hilarious to me back then. My friends and I mimicked her high-pitched bawling and desperate cries for mercy for weeks afterward. Yeah, we were royal dicks. Karma's a bitch, and I got what was coming to me one night. Kurt and Dimitri were busy studying for their midterms, so I went out on my own. By then, we had gotten pretty much everyone in the surrounding area, so I decided to venture off across town and into an unfamiliar territory. Finding a target wasn't difficult. You just had to look for cars with baby seats, houses with overly colored cartoon-themed curtains, or toys left in the yard. I came across a house that fit all three criteria and parked my bike out of view. Playing with the tuner, I eventually found the right frequency. I could hear the sound of a baby snoring very slightly, and a devious little smirk pushed its way into my lips, and my heart began pounding with excitement. It was time to shine. I whispered into the monitor, using the creepiest voice that I could muster. And the house remained dark and lifeless. I figured the homeowners hadn't heard me.
I stand over your bed, waiting, watching. I will get you,
I said louder this time. And nothing. Just the sound of crickets chirping and the occasional dull roar of a car driving down the street. Now, it was a little odd. Parents usually reacted much quicker than that, and I began feeling a little nervous and somewhat exposed. You know, like when you suddenly realized some creeper's gawking at you? And it was getting late, and I had a long bike ride home. Just as I was about to give up and leave, I heard a strange, moist gurgling sound coming from the monitor. The quiet, rhythmic snores ceased, and I assumed that the baby had woken up and was about to start crying. And instead, a man spoke to me.
You're the one being watched now, Juan,
He said softly, and my stomach pirouetted at his words. How did he know my name? I felt sick. Something was wrong, and I could feel it in my bones. I glanced up at the nursery window and saw a silhouette standing there watching me. Had he been there the whole time? The air was thick and difficult to inhale, though perhaps fear was making it hard to breathe. My body quivered uncontrollably, as a sense of dread poured into every inch of me. I climbed on my bike, pedaling desperately to get away. Part of me thought that I was overreacting, but the overwhelming need to flee overpowered my rational mind.
You can't run. I know where you live, Juan,
Continued the man, even as I turned to the corner. I flew down the street, not stopping until I reached a busy boulevard, surrounded by cars and a few late-night joggers. I felt safe.
Your hoodie will run red with your blood, boy,
whispered the man, still talking through the baby monitor in my pocket. A passenger by gave me a nasty look as I yelped loudly in fear, practically ripping my hoodie off in frantic attempt to remove it. To the stranger, I must have looked like some snotty kid tripping balls or something. He didn't know that I was in genuine distress, so I don't blame him for walking off with an insulted huff, though I wish that he would have offered to help me instead. And after stuffing my hoodie in the backpack, I noticed my name scrawled on the back. It was my fucking school jacket. No wonder the bastard knew my name. It then occurred to me that the baby monitors were fairly short-ranged, so I was obviously being followed. I nervously glanced around to try and identify my stalker. Was it in the empty-looking van down the street? That guy walking his dog? The car that had just driven by? Either way, the last thing I wanted was to hear that voice again. So I turned off the device and I started pedaling towards my home. Fear had heightened my senses, and I began noticing every motion of distress in the breeze, every crackle of twigs under my wheels, and every car that zipped past me. I flinched whenever anyone came near, paranoid that whoever had spoken to me through the baby monitor was going to catch up. And fortunately, I made it home without incident. I parked the bike in my garage and I crawled up the stairs to my bedroom. And in one careless motion, I tossed my backpack and baby monitor in the corner of my room, and I dove under my sheets like an Olympic swimmer. Doesn't matter how old you are. Nothing feels safer than being under your blanket. I closed my eyes, hoping that I'd be able to calm down enough to catch a few hours of rest before class. But then I heard static coming from the monitor, right across the room. The monitor that was supposed to be off.
Sweet dreams. One,
said the voice that still haunts my nightmares. Needless to say, I didn't sleep a wink that night. I was too frightened to get out of bed until sunrise. And when I got up, my first order of business was to remove the battery from the monitor and throw it in the trash. I didn't want anything to do with it anymore. I came up with an excuse to give my buddies, so that way they wouldn't think that I was a huge pussy. With massive bags under my eyes, I got dressed, had breakfast, and went to school. It wasn't until a few days later that I saw a house on the news. In an interview, a police officer explained the small family who had been living in the house had been found in their beds, necks slit open. I had been outside when it happened. The killer had heard me on the baby monitor and decided to fuck with me. It was definitely a wake-up call, and I thanked my lucky stars that I hadn't got the shit murdered out of me. I was too busy feeling thankful that I survived to feel bad about the family that hadn't. Empathy, like wisdom, comes with age. Now that I'm an adult with a wife and daughter, I truly understand the consequences of my actions, and the severity of the situation that I put myself in as a tremendously stupid teenage boy. That dreadful night, I thought I reached the epitome of fear. But it was just the tip of the iceberg. As a father, I now know the fear that thrives and multiplies when there's something more precious than your own life at stake. I can't say for sure whether the killer found me again after all these years, or whether a new breed of idiots had the same idea as me and my friends, but I can tell you that I now understand what true terror is. Last night, I heard something on our baby monitor that sent chills into my very soul, shackling me with a paralyzed fear that I doubt that will ever leave me.
I'm still watching.
Entry 1. My name is Gensen, and I live in the suburbs of a small city on the East Coast. I'm not sure that I want to say where exactly. Something is happening, and I think that it's important for me to write this down. I live in a descriptionless apartment complex. I reside on the top floor, which allows me roof access, and I like to spend summer nights on the roof smoking and watching planes fly overhead. Now, I've seen a lot of weird stuff in the sky, but nothing as shocking as what I saw last night. I had just snubbed out my cig and was about to go inside when I noticed it. The sky was dark and full of twinkling stars, tiny pinpricks of curious light. The air was warm and humid, and a gentle breeze timidly brushed across my face. But between the stars, I saw something. It was pale and almost transparent. It was a colossal bridge, impossibly high in the sky. It stretched from horizon to horizon, a long stretch of ghostly construction. At first I thought that it was just the Milky Way, or maybe just some strange light distortion caused by the streetlights. But as I concentrated on the outline of the shape, I began to make out details that were no trick of the light. Looming spires rose into the heavens, twisting architecture of translucent wonder. Glassy blue cables stretched between the spires, forming triangular patterns along the length of the bridge. And it took my breath away. The eerie edifice that extended across the night sky like some kind of pale rainbow. And without taking my eyes off of it, I reached in my pocket and I pulled out another smoke. I lit it and I watched the bridge, tendrils rising from my lips as if to reach out towards the strange phenomenon. And it just hovered there, far above the earth, shimmering its strange blue color. And then after a few minutes, it vanished. Entry 2. I saw it again. It's been 4 days since my last entry. I've gone up to the roof every night to look for the bridge, and tonight it revealed itself once again. It was the same glassy blue color, and the absolute size of it took my breath away. I tried to take pictures of it on my phone, but for whatever reason, it doesn't show up in the photos. I looked down from the roof onto the busy street, and no one seemed to notice it. I can't imagine why. The vastness of it fills the length of the sky, a soaring display of spectacular beauty. And yet, as beautiful as it is, something about it scares me. I don't know if it's the twisting towers that rise into the darkness like ebony fangs or the silence that surrounds it, but something about it fills my stomach with unease. I feel like I shouldn't even be looking at it. I feel like I shouldn't acknowledge it. I don't know where this intuition comes from, but something whispers in my mind, a soft warning spoken through gritted teeth. But how can I turn away? How can I not soak up its mysterious splendor? Entry 3. The bridge appeared again tonight. It's been 3 days since my last entry. I still seem to be the only one to be able to see it. I don't know why I've been blessed with such a gift, but I accept it nonetheless. That voice in the back of my head still warns me of unknown danger, but I don't want to listen to it. This private display of brilliance has, for whatever reason, been reserved for me to gaze upon, and I would be foolish not to stare up at it. And yet, something about the bridge was different tonight. I thought that I could make out shapes walking along it, pausing on occasion to stare down at me. They are the same color as the bridge, but vaguely human in shape. I used an old pair of binoculars I dug out from my closet to get a better look at them. They appeared to be traveling from one horizon to the other, pausing for a few seconds to look out at me. And as I watched, that voice in my head became louder, warning flashing in my brain like red light. And again, I was overcome with the feeling that I should not be watching this, whatever this strange procession was. Entry 4. Not much to report. It's been a couple of days and the bridge appeared again tonight. I watched the weird human-shaped lights march quietly across the long, suspended road. Some looked my way, but most continued without pause. Who are they? Where are they going? I watched for hours, laying on my back, binoculars glued to my face. Entry 5. No. I fucked up. I really fucked up. Shit. I don't have time to write this down right now. Entry 6. I did something bad. I did something really bad. Why didn't I listen to my instincts? 2 nights ago, the bridge appeared again. I got my binoculars out and I excitedly trained them on the strange trails of light. Detail immediately sharpened through the lenses, and I watched as the blue, human-shaped lights walked along the length of the bridge, just like they always do. And I watched for a while, waiting for one of them to notice me. And after a few moments, 2 of the shapes paused and swiveled to look down at me. I felt the warmth spread across my skin, and I knew that they could see me. I knew that they could see me looking up at them. And so I waved. I didn't think about it, I just did it. And as soon as I did, all of the human-shaped lights on the bridge disappeared. Just gone. They just fucking vanished. And that's not all. The bridge changed color. Instead of the soft, opaque blue, the towering spires and swaying cables turned an angry crimson. The expanse of the bridge looked like a bloody trail smeared across the sky. Its walls began to shimmer like it was emitting intense heat. Then, ever so slowly, the red began to drip off the bridge like strands of vermilion drool. The bridge hasn't disappeared since I waved. Entry 7. I could see it all day today, just looming above the earth. I couldn't concentrate at work, and so I went home early. It's everywhere, a pale red hovering over the clouds. I try not to look at it, but it dominates the soft blue sky above. I feel a constant twist of fear in my stomach, a cold grip around my throat. What have I done? Entry 8. It's night. I've closed the curtains, but I can still see the bridge's red glow. I can see the strange scarlet dripping off the glowing construction. I heard something on the news today about a new disease in South America. They say that it came from exposure to an unknown rose-colored sappy substance that seemed to exfoliate from the trees. They say contact with such substances cause immediate convulsions and complete evacuation of the blood through sudden and prolonged vomiting. What remains is a pale, bloodless corpse. It has to be a coincidence. There's no way. Entry 9. It's been a week. I keep hearing reports about this new disease spreading. What is going on? The bridge is a constant mark upon the sky, a glowing patch of long light. It keeps dripping down the sky, sometimes leaving marks in the night like running blood. I don't know how to make it stop. I don't know how to fix this. God, what have I done? Entry 10. I went on the roof tonight. I had to gaze upon it again. Maybe gain some sort of clue as how to reverse what I've done. How was I supposed to know? Why have I been cursed with this horrific burden? And when I got to the roof, I raised my binoculars to my eyes with sweaty hands. I adjusted the focus, and what I saw brought me to my knees, my breath leaving me in a rush of panicked terror. The bridge was still red and oozing down the star-filled sky. But through the magnification, I realized something. It wasn't the bridge that was dripping down heaven's canvas. It was the human-shaped lights. They were now red instead of blue, casting themselves from the bridge, hurling their glowing figures down into the darkness. I watched in absolute horror as I traced them down the sky, trails of shining red staining the horizon as they fell. They were like human comets, blazing a path towards the earth as they dove from their eternal path. And I dropped the binoculars, forcing a scream back down my throat. My back was slick with sweat, and my hand shook as I scrambled with the door to get back inside. And from the darkness of my apartment, I trembled, mind reeling. Through my closed curtains, I could still make out the glowing shapes plummeting to the earth. I ran to my bathroom, and I vomited. Entry 11. It has been 2 days since that night. I don't have much time. The bodies continue to fall from the bridge, an unending cycle of constant fear. It's 4 in the morning now. This will be my last entry. A few minutes ago, something slammed into the roof above me. I jolted from my sleep, and I immediately knew what was happening. I scrambled from my bed, racing for the apartment door, but it was too late. A thick, gooey slime was dripping from the ceiling. It looked like cherry molasses, and I watched it hopelessly dismay as it covered my door. It looked like cherry molasses, and I watched in hopeless dismay as it covered my door. I spun around, searching for another means of escape, but it was everywhere. It's covering the windows, the walls, slowly reaching for the floor. And when it does, it will continue to pool, and eventually it will reach me. I know there's no escaping it. It's only a matter of minutes now. I don't deserve this. I'm shaking, and the reality of death looming before me has filled me with terror. What is going to happen to me? What is the bridge, and why am I allowed to see it? Perhaps I wasn't the only one. Because you see, I feel like when the red eventually reaches me, when it kills me, I have a feeling that I'll wake up somewhere else. I feel like I will wake up on the bridge, waiting my turn along the side, waiting to return to Earth. Yesterday, Todd made it his mission to sleep with as many women as possible. He managed a whopping 37 in just 24 hours, an insurmountable amount for an average day. But this was not an average day. Who's going to say no to some sex? He didn't know that he'd soon be the father to 6 illegitimate children, or he wouldn't have done it. Yesterday, Anne snapped and slit the throat of her toxic ex-husband. The neighbors walked by and saw the whole thing through the window. They simply looked at each other, shrugged, and kept walking. Anne continued her day as usual, leaving the still warm body on her floor. She didn't know that she would be arrested for murder, or she wouldn't have done it. Yesterday, Lacey took her husband and her kids on a drive on the winding roads next to the ocean. Her hand shook as she gripped the wheel, and while her kids sat oblivious in the back, she and her husband shared a meaningful look as she jerked the car to the right and into the crashing waves. She didn't know that she would be shunned while laying 6 feet under, or she wouldn't have done it. Yesterday, the news was announced that an unsurvivable asteroid was heading straight to Earth. Yesterday, the world erupted into unprecedented chaos as everyone had decided what to do with their last 24 hours. But today, utter and complete pandemonium occurred. Because the asteroid missed. You know, it's funny, really. In a maximum security prison filled with murderers and rapists, the worst thing that they can do is leave you completely alone. Solitary confinement. The human brain needs input, or it quickly descends into horrifying madness of its own company. In 2086, when the world government fell into a dictatorship, capital punishment became very common. However, it was solitary confinement that people feared. That was reserved just for treason. And I spent my life making the solitary confinement cells and carrying out that confinement. This is how it works. The cells are molded to exactly fit the condemned. They are human-shaped coffins, arms out to the side at 30 degrees, legs at 45 apart. And for the insertion process, the traitors are sedated. The eyes, ears, and mouth are not damaged, but all are sealed permanently shut. An automated breathing tube inserted through the throat, and 3 IV lines are inserted to feed nutrients. And we use 3 lines in case of mechanical failures on one. Catheters are inserted to handle waste. The condemned are sealed and buried in a very public traitor's graveyard, with enough autonomous supplies to last 80 years, but be considered dead from that day. Nasty, right? Well, it has been my job for the last 20 years, and I am pretty numb to the idea of it. 1 person a day entered the traitor's graveyard. This was so that way the condemned person's story could be featured on the evening news, along with their frenzied begging for a pardon. It hadn't caused me distress in many years. And that was until last week, when I was convicted of treason. Can't really argue. I'm guilty. But after seeing the things that I've seen, it is surprising that I turned to murder. This regime needs to be brought down. This barbaric practice of solitary confinement needs to end now. But it will take a better man than me to achieve that. Today I woke up from the sedation, my eyes and mouth sealed shut. Deafening silence and dazzling blackness greet my panicked brain. Fight or flight responses kick in, and I choose between 0 options. I can't move an inch. Even my fingers are molded in place. I just keep thinking about all those people that I put down here. All of the things that I wish that I had done differently. I can't have been down here for more than a week, and I would choose death if I could. I would give anything to take back the treason that I committed. The 7,000 people that I killed. I only did it to save others from untold suffering. I did it while they were sedated. A syringe of air into their veins to cause cardiac arrest. 1 murder each day for 20 years. Now it's just me alive down here. Living the life of a traitor.